more and more, like, states are wanting to open criminal investigations and arrest Fauci. People have been talking about it for years. A lot of people are sick of hearing about it time and time again because it's been all talk. But now you really see a lot of states stepping up and looking like they're going to be doing something. It says here, took the fifth over 100 times to conceal his crimes. Florida was the first to announce, and now Louisiana's AG Liz Murrill has. Will Dr. Fauci finally face justice? A lot of people have been listening to Senator Paul, who wrote here, dropped my contempt resolution for Anthony Fauci, authorizing the president of the Senate to certify the report of the Committee on Homeland Security, answer questions permanent to subject under inquiry, etc. There's a lot of legal gobbledygook here. It said Dr. Fauci was instructed that he was to provide testimony concerning matters under consideration by the committee, but he didn't do that, did he? So he didn't follow the subpoena like he was supposed to. Dr. Fauci appeared before the committee and delivered prepared testimony discussing his tenure, prior testimony to Congress, and records released, etc. But you can check out that on the Paul website. It says, again, though, Louisiana's opening a Fauci probe after he took the fifth 111 times. People aren't happy about that at all. And a lot of the people have interesting things to say. Brett Weinstein, who's an interesting guy with the Dark Horse podcast and has written a few books as well. You should check those out. And let's see what he has to say.
One message is you are getting a glimpse at the system we actually live under. And it fits well with the paradigm I laid out in a tweet thread this week, not thinking of this topic specifically at all. But you want to put up my tweet thread? I'll just read the first tweet in it. I said, something is at war with us being regular citizens who want things to work and to be left alone. We're slow to react because we think in terms of nations. Our enemies are mafias that wear governments like a cloak to defeat our eyes and fly our flags to disarm our minds. So I think the way to think about Anthony Fauci sitting there in front of this committee today is we are governed by mafias. He is a made man. I think he's just clearly a made man. And that means we don't have the ability to touch him, right? There's only so much that Rand Paul can do, or Ron Johnson. They don't have the power. They are our representatives, and we don't have the power to touch Anthony Fauci for reasons we don't know. Mafias could presumably deal with him. Mafias deal with each other and their own all the time. They have rules, but we don't know them. They're not published anywhere. We don't have standing to say, hey, this person is a flat-out monster and deserves to be dealt with. So anyway, thinking of him as a made man in a mafia whose name we don't know makes a lot more sense of what you saw. What he was effectively doing was a flex. He was sitting there and saying, I don't have to answer your question because who the hell are you?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. However, I think that based on what we just said previously, we could finally see consequences come around. And Ted Cruz also wrote, I will enthusiastically vote to hold Dr. Fauci in contempt. Breaking, Senator Paul is moving to hold Anthony Fauci in contempt of Congress after Fauci invoked the Fifth Amendment over 100 times. The Senate's Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee is set to vote Thursday morning on Paul's contempt resolution, which says Fauci refused to answer questions despite being under subpoena. Okay? And here we have another one. Nothing good has ever come from GOF research. That's why we're ending federal funding for these dangerous experiments. Let's see what RFK has to say.
Well, gain-of-function research is a kind of research where you take a pathogenic organism like a coronavirus and you try to make it more virulent. You try to get it so that it can spread faster and that it's more deadly. And why would you do such a thing? Well, either because you want to weaponize it or because they say that we want to develop a vaccine against future mutations, which is nonsense. No good thing has ever come from gain-of-function research. So we've now adopted a system that is going to end it in our country. And we believe will end it around the world, because any scientist, we will no longer support science in other countries that support it. Any scientist that does these experiments will be punished, and they can be permanently banned from any kind of grants. And the universities also that support this research will also suffer liability. We've had too many bad things.
Wow, that's an amazing turn of events. Just in Florida, Alabama, Louisiana. So now 3 states are launching investigations.
And they've now announced investigations into Dr. Fauci. Former President Joe Biden granted Fauci that pardon before he left the White House, but it didn't protect him from this. Here's Governor Ron DeSantis.
This is a guy that was drinking his own Kool-Aid. He was venerated by the media. I think he liked the fact that he had a lot of this informal power when he was issuing these recommendations and telling governors and mayors to do some of the draconian things that were actually done. It had a really negative effect on a lot of societies throughout this country. You had businesses reeling, people's liberties curtailed, and kids left on the sideline unable to access education.
Absolutely. DeSantis has some great points there. Florida was first as well to launch this investigation into Fauci. So hopefully more and more people will do the same. Auto pen pardons are not that effective. And then we have Rogan. Fauci knew COVID wasn't dangerous for children.
Watch. It's in one way, it's like I told you to a lot of my liberal friends that wanted to pretend that he was a great guy and that he wasn't doing anything wrong. And now that all these emails have gotten out where it shows that he knew that the fatality rate was much lower than they were saying. He knew that it wasn't dangerous for children, that they didn't need vaccines. He knew that the social distancing thing was all nonsense. And he's got a blanket pardon for 10 years. And the thing is, it's like these people get money for research, and that's what they do. They do research. So if you get money and you get grants for research, well, you're going to go do research. And if your research is gain of function research that makes viruses more infectious to human beings, and, you know, you have to do it because that's your job. That's what you do. That's what you studied. That's what you went to school for. Like, what a crazy fucking thing we're doing.
It's absolutely crazy, that's for sure. And then let's see what another thing about what Rand Paul has to say here.
Why not subpoena the assistant and some of the other individuals mentioned?
There will be questions, and she will be subpoenaed for a deposition. Probably not a big full hearing, but she will be asked about that. Her email that she deleted tons of emails was in 2018. We find a scattering of them, but we also feel confident that hundreds, if not thousands, were deleted over a 40-year period, and that we just don't have access to those. Because you have access to what's left, you can't always determine what was removed. But I think it's an important question.
Oh, man. So many things deleted. Makes them look highly suspicious. And then it says here, Stephen A. Smith says voters are not going to forget Fauci's connection to Democrats in the midterms. We'll see what happens.
I don't think it amounts to nothing. Here's why.
Go ahead.
Because he's Anthony Fauci, and because there's such a direct connection to the Democratic Party. Remember, the Democratic Party rode that wave to get Trump out of office because, again, Trump and the economy, things were, according to them, everything was looking a little bit decent. And then the virus, the pandemic arrived. And all of a sudden, everything went haywire and everything went downhill. And they rode that momentum along with getting Trump to be Trump, with his antagonistic, belligerent, narcissistic, immature self. And what does he do? He goes out there, he runs his mouth, and he puts himself in the untenable positions that he put himself in and got himself booted out of office in 2020. Legitimately, by the way, he lost the damn election. It wasn't rigged. He lost. But the point is that the Democrats rode that wave. And so when you look at Anthony Fauci now, the bottom line is they don't get to separate themselves from him now. They don't get to pull that off. If there's any suspicion that can be elevated in his direction, that gets attached to the Democratic Party because you utilized him basically to enforce so much upon the American people at that particular moment in time. And folks are not going to forget that come midterm.
It's rich hearing that from Stephen A. Smith when he has his own controversy in the way he talks. little bit out there sometimes. Let's see what Kennedy has to say here on the Fauci diaries.
The most disturbing thing about that hearing was, and about the release of his diaries, was the huge delta between what he was saying privately and what he was telling us publicly. And you know, one of the clear examples of that is that in January of 2020, he says in his diaries that he just met with the 16 scientists and that they all agreed this could not have come from the wet market.
Right.
And yet the very next day, he was telling Americans that it came from the wet market, and that's the story he continued to spin for the next 2 years.
Well, and of course,
there's so many examples of that in his diary, and we need to restore trust.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is by being trustworthy.
Absolutely. I think RFK is bringing trust to the government, which is a difficult thing to do. At least he's trustworthy within government. The rest of these people, a lot of them, not so much. Says here, CIA whistleblower James Erdman III says CIA analysts who concluded COVID came from a lab had their careers destroyed. This is on the Tucker Carlson show.
The technical analysts that were pushing, saying, hey, listen, guys, this looks like this is a lab leak. Their careers were destroyed for pushing it. This is the story that I really want to make sure gets out. I want to correct the record. They were not bribed. There was a number of analysts inside the CIA, and they did everything in their power, to include writing a little dissent email that went all the way up to the top of WCPMC, saying, hey, listen, guys, we're technical experts, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously. We have this much expertise, and it looks like a lab leak. Their careers were destroyed after that. They weren't no longer part of that establishment. And if there's ever
So the entire leadership of CIA swung behind this lie that it was from an animal.
Which is absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. That people just went along with this nonsense. And then the last video here, another person who became disgusted with the manipulation, Anna Kasparian.
The one thing that I think the conservative Americans were correct about, especially as it pertained to the pandemic, was questioning authority and questioning our institutions. When the pandemic began, I had too much trust in our institutions. I have now switched over to having zero trust in our institutions. And when you have zero trust in our institutions, you're more likely to land at the accurate information.
Certainly seems that way, and a lot of people were smart about that over the last few years, well, where many other people were not. Anyways, thanks for watching this far. Like, share, comment, and have a fantastic day.